Hello, Jimmy. How are you?
Hello, how you doing tonight?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Hey, Susan.
Hi, Toddy.
Hey, I am driving, so I'll be at my desk in just 10 minutes, maybe. But I'm listening in.
Okay, sure. Drive safe. We can always catch you up later if you need to drop for a few seconds.
Sure. Yep.
Yep, just giving folks a couple of minutes to join. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Thank you. And before we start, anyone like to add to the agenda list?
I put in a new issue earlier today. It looks like Gorilla Mux has been archived. And we use that in the HTTP server. I guess we use the Mux in the WebSocket library.
I see. Should I add it to the agenda so we can discuss later?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure what it means for us from an RC1 perspective, since RC1, a milestone, is so close, but I mean, it's no longer maintained at this point. So at some point, we're going to have to do something about it.
Okay. I will add it to the agenda and we can discuss the impact. No longer actively maintained. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We can get started. We'll start with our PR list. And before we start, there's a lot of churn in the project, and I just want to thanks everyone for the patience and being very proactive, like rebasing and merging their conflicts. So we have a few more maintainers now. So hopefully, if we're not getting to your PR in time, so please tag us. And if you need help with rebasing, if you have any questions, just reach out to us on Slack. I see Note is joining the call and his PR is top of the list. I think this PR plugin as OCR artifact, it's good to go. The only one we're waiting, the item we're waiting on is to push a sample plugin to the sample Wabbit network. We previously talked about having local private registries, so our test can be more contained, and we don't have to maintain a external registry. Akash, was the local registry item assigned to you earlier?
Yeah, so still working on that. Have a few other tasks that I've been focusing on before that, but yeah, I'll be picking that back up starting next week.
Yep, sounds great. So I think for this PR, we'll just continue with the Wabbit networks repository. Does Noel, are you on? Are you on the call?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I just joined. Yeah, there was some discussion on the tracking issue that you linked. I think from Toddy and some folks on what the best approach is there. That might be a separate topic.
Yep.
But as far as this PR is concerned, as long as we have something that's kind of like not owned personally by me, that's owned by the project, it should work as long as it's an OCI compliant registry. I've tested against Azure Container Registry and Docker Hub, and both work. I tested against GHCR.io and it did not work. And I don't know the status of their support. So as long as it's Docker Hub or Azure Container Registry should work.
Thanks for that. And Noel, do you want to create an issue to push the sample plugins to the Wabbit network registry so one of us can pick it up?
Yeah, I'll convert the comment at the top of your screen to an issue so that we can do that and get this PR updated and closed up.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, accidentally closed the PR list as well.
Hey, Susan.
Yep.
When can we bring actually the topic with testing with other registries? Because one of the problems I see as adoption is that we cannot ensure that everybody will be using ACR or OCI 1.1 compliant registry for that. So at least we need to provide some test matrix and the results from that test matrix to customers so they are aware that, for example, Ratify works with this registry and doesn't work with other registries. So it will take time for registries to actually migrate to 1.1. And having in mind that there are some plans for release of Ratify, we should be able to at least give visibility to customers where they can test it and what registries Ratify can work with.
Yeah, so I've seen other projects like the Secret Store driver. They have a test matrix against different cloud providers. So for example, they'll say, oh, the Azure Key Vault provider test is passing, maybe a different cloud provider test is failing. Like they have a nice matrix on their homepage. So right now, what we have is gate checks. So end-to-end scenarios that run on each PR that validates like the core functionality of verifiers. And I think the next level is like a matrix like you described, like, do we work with this registry? Do we work with MCR? I think the next step is to log an issue and prioritize that.
Yeah, because I comment on one of the issues that David created in the past, that is giving kind of the we have a very simple matrix right now that eventually we can cover at least at the beginning, which is 1.0 compliant registry, 1.1 compliant registry, and a hybrid, which actually is the Docker Hub right now is in a hybrid mode. And but yeah, we can take this offline and I can continue. Maybe we can, I'll look at the issue and maybe we can prioritize for maybe next RC release or after.
Yep. And do you think we should also divide our test to like this set of tests should run on PRs, and this set of tests should run, say, daily or weekly, so we can let's have a start with the matrix, and we can put different tests in each bucket.
Yeah, and also a plan how to maintain those, because we don't want to incur some charges on maintaining them. So we need to figure out what is the best way to really have a public registry tests.
So just a quick question. Does this require OCI 1.1? Would it work with OCI 1.0?
Akash, do you have any insight here?
I'm not super familiar with the exact differences between the two, but to my knowledge, there's fallback support, which I don't know if that means that is the OCI 1.0 compliant, where refers will work with registries which are 1.0 compliant, versus using the native refers API built in for 1.1. We use ORS, and ORS under the hood does have the capability to do fallback support.
Fallback.
So if fallback equates to that, then yes, we can do that.
Well, I was just wondering, I mean, the OCI, pulling the images from OCI, I mean, does it, I didn't realize it would need a 1.1. I just assumed it would be, I didn't think it hinged on that.
Nope.
So I think that's a question I think we need to investigate. It's different than, let's say the notation verification fallback, right? You're correct that the ORS Go library should handle the fallback when a 1.0 is reached and a 1.1 is not available.
So I think the question here would be, if reference API is not there, do we query the tag and then pass image index? Like, I do know that ORAS Go does it, but is it automatic, or it's like someone has to do it manually, pass a flag or what?
Oh, okay. No, so ORS Go actually automatically does it. It pings the refers API, and if it sees that it doesn't exist, then it'll automatically switch to using the tag-based scheme to pull the index.
Yeah. ORAS automatically does that. So in theory, we should not have problems. However, there are certain registries that are not even properly implementing 1.0, like because ORAS based that on the response codes written by the registries, and certain registries do not have good support for that. But that's why we need to have the test matrix for it.
Okay, well, I haven't had time to test this yet. I'm kind of focusing on something else, but I will like to test it with our ECR, and I'll get back as far as I'll collect the testing information, and when the matrix is ready, I'll fill out the matrix.
Yeah, let us know the result. Thanks, Jimmy. And thanks for the clarification, Akash. Next PR would be add mutation support. Akash, what does this little cross mean?
Oh, this is so actually Binbin and I, we've been working on adding Azure end-to-end test support, and hopefully we can in the future follow up with AWS support as well. But we've been running into some issues with some token permissions, which is why it's showing up as a cross. But the required checks are still passing. So once we remerge the latest changes from main, that test will get bypassed for the meanwhile.
Okay, sounds good. So this one is just pending the conflict.
I just need, I'll resolve the conflicts. I've addressed all the comments. I think it's all done. The only slight outstanding issue is that due to some performance considerations, we are going to have to change our default verification and webhook mutation webhook timeouts that we use when installing Gatekeeper with Ratify. So I've made the changes in the chart. So previously we were doing a 7-second verification webhook timeout override, and I've lowered it down to 5. And I've increased the mutation webhook timeout to 2 from 1. And basically, long story short, we need to have the mutation webhook times 2 plus the verification timeout be less than 10 seconds. Otherwise, there could be a potential leader election issue with Kubernetes. So that's like an edge case, but we still want to make sure we don't cause any leader election issues. So that's why.
And what was the use case for the mutation again?
So this is to do the tag to digest mutation. So when someone tries to deploy a resource where the image name is tag based, so that we can actually pin it to a digest.
Oh, okay.
We do this mutation provider, which calls a mutation webhook first. Once you have that set up using Gatekeeper, and then it calls Ratify. We implemented a new endpoint in Ratify, which will mutate tag to digest, and then from there, the verification webhook kicks in.
Okay, thanks.
Any concerns about the timeout adjustment on the core? Anyone? Does it impact your use case in any way?
I'm worried. I'm worried. I should say I'm wondering about the 5-second instead of 7-second for the validating. Right. That's what you mentioned, right? You reduced it down from 7 to 5.
Yeah. So I guess one plus that we noticed after our last batch of performance testing was that with some of our caching efforts that we've been able to do a little bit better timing wise. And we've also, for now, for RC, we've narrowed our performance benchmarks to kind of focus on a lower pod scale set. So rather than 10,000 pods, we're looking at more like in the hundreds of pods. So in those scenarios, we're seeing verification take around 3 seconds. So 5 should be plenty of time. And the reason for lowering it in the first place was this restriction we have with leader election. Mutation was taking consistently higher than 1 second. So that's why we had to bump the timeout for that. And in order to bump that timeout, we had to lower the verification webhook timeout. This is kind of a fix for now, and I think we'll have to keep this in the back of our heads moving forward after the release to see if it poses a problem in the future.
Okay. I mean, the reason that I bring it up is because we're looking at adding basically a plugin that will do a subsequent call beyond hitting the OCI registry through the regular verifier. So I'm just looking at how much time I'm going to have now, 5 seconds as opposed to 7, but we'll see how it works out.
Sure, sounds good. Yeah, let me know if we need to revisit this and increase it again.
Is this configurable by the chart? Like if Jimmy's scenario needs the full 7 seconds, can he adjust that?
Yeah, so actually that's one of the changes that I introduced in this PR too. So now it's all configurable via the chart. So you just can add the timeout there.
Cool. Okay, the next PR, add cache to Aura Store. I think Binbin is off for the Lunar New Year. Akash, do you know the status on this? Or is he waiting for a sign off from Anish?
Yeah, so this one's ready to go basically. We're just waiting for Anish to do a final sign off. I spoke with him earlier today. He's gonna get to it this evening. So hopefully we can merge it in later today or early tomorrow.
Okay, sounds great. And the Azure Key Vault provider PR is in the same bucket. So I'll be able to sync up with Anish today or later tomorrow. And the next one, update SBOM verifier. Thanks for the patience, Jeff. I know you've had this out for a long time. It's currently, I saw there are some checks failing before, but now it looks like it's waiting for approval.
Yeah, I just saw the comment regarding the naming of
Mhm.
the function, and I just pushed an update. So that's probably why it's waiting to run again.
Okay,
But yeah,
interesting.
none of the functionality changes, just a change in function name.
Okay, cool. So I guess once the checks passes, it'll be ready to go.
Yep.
Thank you. Next one. Sajay, should we discuss this? Like, do you need Jimmy to sign off on adding him as a maintainer?
I'm not a maintainer, so you folks should decide.
Okay, so we have all signed off, and I guess Bin is oof. Jimmy,
So I think I'll defer to Toddy on this because Toddy's been
Yeah.
looking at the governance from different places, right? So Toddy, do you need all four or super majority or whatever that is? We don't have any governance around that, right?
I don't think we have. So at this point of time, I think we can just add Jimmy as a maintainer. I need to look at the governance. Even in super majority like this satisfies the need. So 3 people voting out of 4
Cool.
is enough to actually get the super majority.
Okay,
So.
let's get Luis and Jimmy in today. Start.
I have a comment about Jimmy. Does Jimmy have write access to the repository, like or not repository, to the project maybe?
I'll work with Bridget to see if that's the case. Once let's get this formality out of the way, and then GitHub permissions we can work on.
Okay. Welcome, Jimmy. Looking forward to working with you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I guess it'll take some time for the PR to run, so I will update branch on this one as well. And Sajay, you're saying once the checks are passing, it's good to merge?
I guess so.
Okay. So I can do that after the call, or Toddy, if you want to keep an eye on this and do it when convenient. Contribution letter, it's in draft. Go ahead.
Sorry, to merge Jimmy and Luis PRs, or I missed that.
Yes. So after these gate finishes, we can. I think we're good to squash and merge.
Yep, we can do that. So on the contribution ladder, I had some comments there, and Sajay, I don't know whether you had a chance to look at that.
No, unfortunately, no, but I'll take a look at it.
Okay. Yeah, so there are some roles that are missing, like reviewer and organization member, that are not described in the document, because that's kind of one big area. The other one is really we need to, because this is a template, I guess, that you got from CNCF, is to really make it the wording sound for the Ratify project itself. But yeah, take a look at my comments and we can iterate on that.
Sure. Do we have a distinction of org right now? Because there is no org, right?
Yeah,
That's
the
why
org
we
is
need that
days
section.
labs. Yeah, the org is days labs. We may want to remove that, at least from the table of content, but there is still mention of reviewers and criteria for maintainers to be reviewers before that, but we don't have the reviewers at all described at all.
Okay.
So that's a big.
Do maintainers have to be in the Dace Lab org? No, right?
No, that's
No,
what I
no,
checked with Bridget.
no.
All right, good.
No.
Okay. Last one is from Anish. He's not on the call, but Akash and I were talking earlier, and we were wondering, like, what is the relationship between the RS cache time to live versus the request cache time to live. So I've added in the notes here that should they be the same value and which one should be longer lived. So Akash, I think you're more familiar. Do you want to talk about what's the current numbers?
Yeah, I guess before I talk about that, let me just give everyone a little bit of context so we know what we're talking about. So there are basically two caching efforts that are ongoing right now. One is an extra level of caching at the Aura store level. So currently, right now, when we're trying to grab the signatures that are stored in registry, we have to call the refers API on each subject. And that's a call out to registry every single time. So because we were running under the assumption that this could change, this call was required every single time. Even during Gatekeeper, if you had an audit interval where you're auditing pods, every 60 seconds, you would still have these calls out to registry, and this can pose problems with the volume of requests. So in order to cache these, this is the implementation that Binbin has created, and this will actually cache the refers for a set amount of time based off of the TTL. So currently the TTL that he set is about 10 seconds, but it's a configurable TTL, and you can actually do that from the chart. So this value can be set to whatever. We are not exactly sure what it should be. I think more testing and maybe some user usage will dictate that. But the other caching effort, which Anish is working on, is a request level cache, and it specifically targets the scenario where you have multiple requests that are coming to Ratify from Gatekeeper, and they're all for the same subject, and they all happen at once. And the scenario this can happen is, let's say you're on startup, you deploying something in your Kubernetes cluster, and it's a bunch of replicas, and they all get scheduled to be created at once, which would result in a flood of requests to Ratify all at once for the same subject. And currently, we don't distinguish between those subjects. We would just kick off multiple Go routines to verify each of these subjects, even though they're actually the same. So the point of the cache here is to have a locking mechanism so that only one request gets through, completes its routine, gets the result, caches the result, and then the other waiters will grab the result from the cache and then return immediately. So it's supposed to be used as a very short-lived cache to target this specific scenario. Currently, the time to live is 30 seconds, so it's higher than the ORS cache, and it's also not configurable, which I think it probably should be, just so we can tweak it. But the real question here is, should this number be less than the ORS cache, and then should it actually just be tied to the ORS cache TTL? So hopefully that made a little bit more sense.
So with respect to these two different caches, are we also going to consider at some point an API that allows us to either in bulk invalidate the cache or invalidate certain subjects within the cache?
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. We could do that. We have not designed for that, or I'm trying to think of a scenario where that would be useful. How would you see that being used?
So it really depends. I mean, if we're talking about 10 seconds and 30 seconds, it probably is not that big of a deal. But if users start adjusting this thing upwards, I mean, if they're only using their own private registry and they start adjusting this thing upwards, what's the ceiling on how far they can go? I guess there is none. And then it's a matter of, can they just wait until the cache, flushes, or is it a matter of, can we, give them an API to allow them to invalidate? I mean, it's probably a low value thing. I was just wondering if you guys had even looked at it. So that's all. I mean, if we're talking like, 10 to 20 or 30 seconds, I don't think it's that big a deal.
Yeah, I don't think we had given that much thought. It's an interesting scenario though. But yeah, we could definitely bring that up as an issue and see how that would fit in. But in terms of 10 or 30 seconds, I guess what the real question right now is like, what should these values be, and should they be tied to each other somehow, or should they just be left configurable and we'll just figure it out as people use it and they can adjust it accordingly? A little bit of a unknown here for that.
I mean, I don't see a ratio. I don't see like why it would need to be tied to each other, or even like a ratio of some type. I mean, I think it's having an independent is nice because there are two different performance possibilities here, right? So, yeah, I mean, that's my 2 cents, I guess.
Right, and from my perspective, in terms of the timing, we should probably do more validation, like get more feedback from customers as they use this, right? We really don't have a baseline to sort of to base our any number we set up here.
It would be nice if they're configurable though, right? Both of them, right? You said the second one that's 30 seconds, but the burst traffic is not currently configurable.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so I think Anish was a little bit in favor of maybe not making it configurable, but I think it doesn't hurt. We could just keep it as an option in the Helm chart that they could update if they wanted to.
You know, let's say it goes out as not configurable as an you know, first iteration, MVP or whatever. We get data back, you know, that shows either that's fine or it's not, and that needs to be changed. I mean, I don't think it's not a one-way door here, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
Yeah, we have a sync with Anish tomorrow, so we can follow that up offline. But just checking with the group here to see if there's any scenarios that we need to consider when we decide on these default time to live. But yes, if no other concerns, we can just leave, start somewhere, and then we'll wait for feedback.
Yeah, there was one question from in the chat from Pratesh about negative caching. Like if we see a flood of bad requests. Pratesh, do you want to?
Yeah, so basically we are adding a modal behavior here where in success scenario, we will cache the request. Like if there are a bunch of, basically we'll dedupe the request. If there are 10 similar requests, we'll just only process one of it. What happens if I'm just doing bad requests?
What do you mean by bad request?
I mean, which fails, which doesn't goes to process. There can be validation error or whatever, something is wrong with that, which doesn't abide by the contract.
Yeah, so it'll be like a deny of service.
Yeah, and if I because the server usually would be scaled to and handle only positive use cases where we will deduping like 100 requests to one request. But if I send 100 bad requests, will that get deduped also?
I believe it'll just error out. Is that right, Akash? And then we'll just process all the bad requests one at a time.
Yeah, so our caching is based off of the key is the subject, the image name that you provide as input. So as in bad request, if you have malformed image names, that will get caught before that, and it won't even reach the point where it's cached. We'll just the server will immediately return that, hey, this is a bad request, because we do like a reference parsing. That's the first thing we do when the request comes in. But if it's beyond that, I don't think we have any scenarios for that setup.
That's like I'm just trying to understand here. Let's say if I am sending 100 requests with similar image digest or image reference, and all of the other parameters in the request are bad values, you will still serve. It will still get cached, and we will just return. We will only process one of it and return as a response for all the requests, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's a good question. If I understand it correctly, if let's say we have a burst of traffic, and we decide this is the one that's going to go through that matches the other subjects, but it comes back bad. Now, do we look do we have any kind of, to me, it would be more like a, you know, an exponential back off scenario, right? Where we have a set of subjects that are, you know, need to be fulfilled, but the first call failed. Do we exponentially back off and then try the second call in the stack and so on and so forth?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I don't believe Anish has added that logic. So currently, if it's a bad request, then the bad response is going to get cached and then picked up by the other ones and returned back as bad.
So then,
we don't have a retry.
Yeah, that would. I mean, I guess that would make sense. I mean, depends on what the burst traffic was about, but when you were describing the scenario for this, it sounded like I just assumed that the traffic would be, you know, based on you know, scaling out tremendously, or I'm starting up, or whatever. My replica count is changing for some reason. And I guess it would make sense that all of them fail, not just one of them, though the controller should be able to take care of the rest. If we got some of them, if they started to work, if they started to succeed, then the replica controller should take care of the rest, you know, bringing the rest of them on. So I'm wondering how we work around this. I mean, it's similar to how, you know, crash loop backoff works in pods, right? I mean, going upwards towards 5 minutes of a exponential back off, and then if it's running for 10 minutes or so, then I think it's 10 minutes. I think they go back, reset the back off limit, I guess. But so I think part of the testing should be some, you know, a negative testing, right? So that we could verify that see what kind of behavior we're going to get when we get bad requests.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Let me add a comment on the PR and see, maybe Anish can add that to his some of the testing that he's added.
Because we're very close to RC, should we start with the basic cache and then we can start a doc and describe all the caching scenarios that we should handle and then maybe address it for the next release? Or do we need to address this immediately?
I think we should be okay to start with this and then address feedback and any negative scenarios in a follow-up.
Jimmy, Pritesh, do you think is that reasonable, or is it a release blocker?
Well, I think Pritesh dropped. I don't think it's an issue. I don't think it's going to blow. I didn't realize this was milestone for RC1, but I mean, I don't see it as being an issue. I mean, we're going to have to pay attention to what it does, and negative testing, I think, will have to happen at some point to figure out what happens when we start to see a bunch of, you know, bad requests coming through. How do we handle that?
Yep. Yeah, in that case, Akash, maybe we should merge the basic one and then we can start a issue so we can improve it in the next cycle. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds good. I can make an issue and then I'll tag Anish so that he has a little bit more context too.
Right. I think the other thing, so Bin is using Ristretto for the ORS caching, and Anish is using API machinery. So I know Bin did some exploration in different modules to use for caching, but Anish also, like, it looks like we're using 2 different modules now. So it would be interesting to understand why are we using one versus the other? Is this really like a choice thing, or is this like, because I'm assuming that we also would like to sort of standardize here, as well as understanding we do have any licensing considerations we need to make.
That's a good call out, actually. Why are we using 2 different ones, and is there a technical reason for it?
Right. So Bin did some. I know a little bit more around Bin's choice on Distretto, because he's like he looked into things like garbage collection, like a lot of different profiles. I am not entirely sure why Anish went with API machinery, but we should definitely like have a follow-up standardizing on that.
Yeah, sounds good. I think maybe we can add a comment in the PR so we can track the discussion.
Right.
Yep, sounds good. We will follow up offline with Anish. Okay, that is all our PRs. Next up is the new issue. Jimmy, do you want to? Okay, let me bring it up first. It's in the issue.
Yeah,
And
it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yep.
I guess right before the holidays, right before the American holidays, the Gorilla Toolkit project or suite of projects, and it was archived. They tried, I think, for several months to get new maintainers, but they couldn't. And there was, obviously a high bar to get maintainers in there, anyways. But it's now been archived, so it means obviously it's not actively being maintained. So there's options, right? We can take it on, I guess, or fork it and take it on or whatever. But then there's also several that are out there that we should probably take a look at long term, and that is, I put a list right there. The one that I'm primarily looking at right now for my own private work is the last one there, Chi, however they pronounce it, but because it seems to be the one with the least amount of effort to reuse the scheme that's being used by Gorilla Mux. I think Fiber actually uses the actual Gorilla Mux schema as well. So I think maybe the Gorilla Mux schema might live on, but it's just at some point we've got to get rid of Gorilla Mux if it's not going to be around and maintained.
What do you think the cost of replacement is? Is this actually like a relatively small change, or?
So as far as I can tell, based on my searches in the project, I mean, Gorilla Mux and the WebSocket library, the Mux library and the WebSocket library are referenced in the HTTP server Go file. So I think that's primarily where it's at. I don't see it. I didn't see it in my searches used anywhere else, but so I don't think it's a huge lift. I just think it's considerable testing to make sure that we haven't forgotten anything. But if we choose a library that is easy to convert, then it obviously would be an easier effort. But it doesn't touch a lot of things inside the project. It's really just for handling the inbound HTTP requests and passing off the requests to handlers, which
Do
is
we know
hard.
which?
So good.
Do we know which one has the highest community engagement?
I haven't gone that far yet. No, I mean one of my Go mentors, he pushed me towards the last one, so I'm looking at that one right now. The third one on the list is actually built into Golang. Right, it's part of the HTTP libraries, so that's also something that we could probably look at as well. And if we could use it, we probably should go with that one. But I don't know what long term that locks us into, right? So.
Interesting.
I mean, I've always used Gorilla Mux forever. So, I mean, I've got several projects that I have to update as well, personal ones, but yeah.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this up, Jimmy. I think we'll triage this and probably look at addressing it in the next releases.
Yeah, I'm gonna test some of them out and see what the lift is, personally, and then I'll give you all some feedback on what I find out.
Yeah, that'd be great. Cool. That's everything on our agenda. Anything else folks likes to discuss?
So there was a question earlier about, and it was answered, I believe, as far as Oris Go handling the fallback in case there's a fallback based on it doesn't find the 1.1 references, and it will fall back to 1.0. Another question I had was the implementation that we're moving towards for the AWS solution is requiring another binary to be used with notation. And so I'm trying to get my head around where that binary needs to live. My assumption is that it would go into the same plugins directory where we compile the current set of Go plugins as binaries, and we copy them into that directory. But I don't know for sure, because there is, Notation has its own file structure that it looks for when it's looking for plugins. So I just don't know where I'm at yet, with this thing. So I've wondered if anybody had any insight to, because it's not necessarily a Ratify plugin, a verifier or anything. It's more like a Notation plugin.
Yes, Jesse, I may be able to help you with that. I investigated the file structure that actually we use in Notation. It differs based on where actually you deploy it. It's different on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. I would assume that you're looking for the Linux one, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm looking for where would I have to put the binary that I register as a Notation plugin? Where would I have to put that in Ratify, in the Ratify image that would run on top of let's say a Linux AMD 64 architecture?
I can send you, there was some documentation. I need to dig it out about the actual location for that.
Yeah, I have some
want-
documentation with respect to where Notation is going to expect it. I just want to understand how that works with the Ratify as well, because Ratify doesn't seem to put it in the same spot, I guess. I mean, Ratify verifier plugins are like compiled and stuck in the plugins directory, right? So, I mean, I'm just now starting to look at this. I just want to know if you guys had any insight, and if you do, if you could just forward it, my way.
For the Ratify, I need to look at that.
And then
maybe no.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say that
No.
there must be some kind of delay here, but I was going to say that we're going to obviously, if it sounds like we're going to use a custom Ratify image, that's what it looks like, because from what I understand, because we need to have a binary in there that Notation can use, and it's an additional binary than the ones that are currently compiled as part of the Docker file. So we'll have I guess we're going to base that off of RC1 code base. And along those lines, what am I trying to get to? So, the 519 PR, the OCI, that's not stamped for milestone RC1, right? So that would be, so because that's not going to be an RC1, as far as I know, that's the reason why we're looking at having to have an image with this specific binary to work with our solution.
So let me just make sure I understand the scenario. So the scenario is that you need to have a special plugin for Notation that will do the work, and this you will deploy as a Ratify plugin.
So the way that I understand it, so first off, I've already done end-to-end testing with Ratify and Notary verifiers, and that works fine in our environment, in our 1.1 environment, our test environment. However, there's additional things that we want to do with another plugin that, certificate revocation checks and that type of thing. And that's what that plugin will do for us. And that plugin is integrated directly to the Notation level, not at the Ratify level. So I'm not 100% sure how that works. So that's what I'm trying to effort right now, is figure out where this has to be. And the way that I've done it in like desktop testing, basically on a Mac OS, is that Notation will find it if you put it in the right spot. So I need to find out where that right spot is inside the Ratify, file structure, and then I'll stick that binary in there. So, but if you all had any insight into that, if not, it's no big deal. But I mean, because it's kind of a one-off use case. But in so doing, without the OCI solution to pull these plugins, or so it looks like I would have to, build my own RC1 image that has that binary in it. Until the
Okay.
OCI.
Yeah, is that the issue that actually we're discussing? So I can take this offline and eventually take a look. I understand the problem. I am not sure whether most probably will need to build your own image, or at least at the first stages. Later on, we need to look at that, how we can incorporate these things.
Yeah. So it's a timing thing for us. I mean, if I had it my way, we would wait for the OCI plugin piece to work, and then it'd be a, we wouldn't have to maintain our own image. But timing wise, I think I may have to temporarily maintain an image that has our binary in it.
Yeah, I would plan for that, but let me look at offline on the structure. This, and I don't know who is on the call. Sorry, folks, I'm still on my phone. But if maybe Akash or Saji are on the call, they can eventually help with how we solve this problem for, let's say, Azure Key Vault, because I would think that this is a similar problem. Akash or Sajay, are you guys on the call? Okay, Sajay dropped.
Yeah, sure. I think this would require a follow-up. I'm not too familiar with how the plugins work for notation, but yeah, I can look into it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, let's if you Jesse, if you have an issue, if not, let's file one issue and take this offline and have a discussion in the issue itself. Because
okay,
that will be, we need to solve this problem more generically, because in the future we'll have hopefully more plugins that we need to plug in.
Well, I mean, there's two types of plugins, right, that I'm talking about.
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
The one is
the Notary and the Ratify.
Yeah, the Ratify ones are being stuck in the plugin verifier. I think there's 4 of them, and the SBOM cosign, license checker, schema validator. They're all being compiled and copied into the plugins directory. I'm not sure that's where this binary will have to go. So I'm still trying to figure out where it has to go for notation to discover it, and then I'm also looking at probably having to at least temporarily maintain a custom image. So anyways, I'll put it in I'll try to wrap it up and put it in an issue here shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Would the notation community have any ideas like where notation would find the plugin?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, we do.
There is a document that I'll put in the issue as well. This was just thrown at me today, so I haven't had time to go through it all, but I figured since I was on the meeting, I'd ask you guys if you'd seen this before. But I don't think we have in the project, right? So I mean, this is kind of new. But yeah, there is a document published by the notation folks that show here's where you put a plugin if you want notation to discover it. So I just have to overlap there where notation is and its file system, if it's the same as Ratify or whatever. So
yeah, so I've had just a little bit of experience. This is Noel here, with notation plugins with Key Vault, because there's a Key Vault plugin. I think the big blocking factor, or the big question is, we're using Notation Go inside Ratify, and as far as I understand, plugins are handled by the Notation CLI, which we are not using. So I don't know that even if you put it in the .config/notation plugins, whatever structure, I would be really surprised if Notation Go actually picked it up and did anything with it, even if you maintain your own custom image, even if we updated the OCI artifacts feature to like put it, arbitrary files while you want them. I think there's more work to do.
Yeah. I'm under the same impression. But that's one of the reasons I came here with it.
Right.
So yeah. But I'll let you know as soon as I find out something. Yeah.
If you I can if you post that issue, I can at least give you the right location for the Azure one. Like you can just plop it in there and see if it does anything. It comes up in the plugin list, but yeah.
Okay.
I'd be surprised if it activates.
So with the Azure one, did you guys have to write special code to get Notary libraries to find it, or?
So the way the the Azure Flow works is it doesn't use, it uses that at the signing stage. So when you sign, you use the Azure Key Vault plugin. And then that does like a remote sign so that the key stays up in the cloud and all the good stuff. On the Verify side, it doesn't do that. Right now we're using, I think, CSI driver, and then Susan's got the work to have the CRD for that.
Okay.
So it just pulls the certs and kind of just like runs notation verify, the notation go equivalent of notation verify, but the certs are local, or the public key is local.
Well, it looks like I need to get on some testing and find out sooner rather than later that the notary libraries will or will not satisfy the same requirement that the CLI does. So.
Yep. Good luck, and let us know how you go.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else? Anyone? Okay. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks, Susan.
Take
Thank
care.
you,
folks.
Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you.